It was Saturday, June 23rd, 2018. The boys of the Wild Boars Football Club were excited for another day of training. The team, made up of 12 boys between the ages of 11 and 16, was led by their assistant coach, Ekkapol Chantawong, while the head coach was busy preparing for a game with the senior team. The head coach said his goodbyes after practice, expecting the boys to head home soon. But a few hours later, the coach noticed something strange. His phone was filled with missed calls from the boys' parents. They were calling because the boys had never returned home. Their families were growing more anxious by the minute. With every unanswered phone call, dread crept in. The coach tried to reach the assistant coach and the other boys, but his calls went straight to voicemail. Panic set in. Finally, he managed to reach one player, Sangpol, a 13-year-old boy who had been picked up by his mother after practice. Sangpol explained that the rest of the team had planned to visit the nearby Tham Luang caves for a quick exploration. The coach felt his heart sink. He knew how dangerous those caves could be, especially during the monsoon season. Without wasting a moment, he jumped into his car and rushed to the caves. When he arrived at the cave entrance, he found the boys' bicycles, backpacks, and shoes, abandoned and covered in mud. The sight was terrifying. The boys were still inside, but the entrance to the cave was now flooded with water. Heavy rains, which had started while the boys were in the cave, had already made the cave entrance impassable. The boys were trapped inside the cave system, and it was now a race against time. The coach immediately called for help. Thai authorities and local police rushed to the scene. As they arrived, they realized that the water level inside the cave was rising rapidly. Initial efforts to enter the cave and search for the boys were futile. The floodwaters were too strong. The team's parents arrived, frantic, their worst fears seemingly confirmed. The boys were trapped, and there was no easy way to reach them. Authorities soon realized they needed expert help, and they called in the Thai Navy SEALs, known for their elite training in diving and rescue operations. But the Navy SEALs were not specialized in cave diving, and Tham Luang was one of the most dangerous cave systems in Thailand, spanning over 10 kilometers, with narrow passageways, deep chambers, and treacherous currents. The monsoon rains had created a deadly scenario. A local British expat, Vernon Unsworth, who had been exploring the cave for years, heard the news and offered his assistance. His knowledge of the cave system was invaluable, and he quickly connected Thai authorities with the British Cave Rescue Council. Two of the world's best cave divers, John Valanthan and Rick Stanton, were soon on their way to Thailand. These men, though not military trained, were cave diving legends with decades of experience navigating the darkest, most dangerous underwater caves on Earth. The stakes were growing higher by the day. As the days passed, people feared the worst. The boys had only planned for a short trip into the cave, meaning they likely had little to no food, and the oxygen levels inside the cave were decreasing rapidly due to the floodwaters. For the British divers, arriving in Thailand presented a challenge. Not only did they have to navigate through a complex flooded cave system, but they had to contend with skepticism from Thai authorities. Why would civilian divers from another country be more capable than the elite Thai Navy SEALs? The truth was, while the Navy SEALs were incredibly skilled, cave diving required a very specific set of skills, and John and Rick were among the best in the world. When they finally entered the cave, the conditions were worse than they had imagined. Visibility was close to zero, so bad that they had to feel their way along the cave walls. The current was strong, pushing them back as they tried to advance. Using ropes and lines, they began setting up a guideline system, essential for any divers to make it safely through the cave. Each dive into the cave was grueling, with Rick and John having to physically pull themselves along the floor to avoid being swept away by the current. Their first target was Pattaya Beach, a high-elevation chamber deep inside the cave where the boys might have sought refuge from the rising waters, but after hours of exhausting effort, they reached Pattaya Beach only to find it empty. The boys were not there. The situation was becoming increasingly dire. Heavy rains continued to fall, and the water levels inside the cave rose higher, making it even more difficult to advance. However, Rick and John decided to press further into the cave despite the risks. They had already used up much of their air supply, but their instincts told them to keep going. They swam past Pattaya Beach deeper into the cave. Suddenly, out of the darkness, they spotted something, a faint light ahead. As they swam closer, they could hear voices. John Valanthan turned on his camera and shone his light on the figures in the distance. It was the boys. All 12 boys and their assistant coach were huddled together on a narrow rock ledge, alive but weak. They had been trapped in the cave for 10 long days. The discovery was a miracle. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief. But the hardest part was yet to come. Getting the boys out of the cave was going to be a monumental task. The cave passages were narrow and treacherous, and the boys were weak, dehydrated, and some were too young to swim. As the Thai Navy SEALs and British divers deliberated on how to proceed, a tragic event struck. Saman Kunan, a former Thai Navy SEAL who had volunteered for the mission, tragically lost his life while placing air tanks along the cave system. His death was a painful reminder of just how dangerous the rescue operation was. They were trapped approximately 4 kilometers inside Tham Luang Cave, nestled in the mountainous region of northern Thailand. The heavy monsoon rains had flooded the cave system, blocking their exit and creating treacherous conditions that posed immense challenges for rescue efforts. As water levels continued to rise, time became a critical factor. After extensive discussions and evaluations, one plan involved teaching the boys to dive and swim through the flooded passages. However, this posed a significant risk. The cave was filled with narrow sections, strong currents, and unpredictable obstacles. It quickly became evident that the boys' safety was paramount, and an alternative approach was necessary. Dr. Richard Harry Harris, an Australian anesthesiologist and cave diving expert, joined the rescue team. He understood the complexities of both cave diving and the physiological effects of sedatives. Dr. Harris proposed a daring plan to sedate the boys during their extraction to prevent them from panicking in the water. This idea was met with both hope and skepticism, as the plan hinged on successfully administering the right dosage and ensuring the boys could be safely transported through the submerged passages. The team meticulously developed a sedation protocol using ketamine, which could keep the boys unconscious for several hours while providing sufficient safety measures. However, the potential for complications was significant. If a mask were to slip or malfunction, or if a boy were to wake up in the middle of the dive, the consequences could be fatal. Yet, the urgency of the situation left little room for alternative solutions. On July 8th, the rescue operation commenced. Each boy was carefully prepared in the cave, where Dr. Harris administered the sedative. The full-face diving masks, custom-made for each child, were then fitted securely over their faces. These masks were designed to create a seal that would provide positive air pressure, preventing water from leaking in. With the divers strapped to their charges, a careful orchestrated sequence of events unfolded. The rescue team included some of the world's best cave divers who were intimately familiar with the winding and complex layout of Tham Luang Cave. They had trained extensively for such an operation, and every detail was critical. Each boy was tethered to a lead diver who guided them through the flooded sections. They navigated tight choke points, dark underwater passages, and areas where visibility was virtually non-existent. The divers had to be extremely cautious, ensuring that the boys remained calm and secured throughout the journey. As the boys were transported through the cave, the team faced numerous obstacles. There were sections where divers had to hold their breath and swim underwater, navigating through narrow crevices while managing the unconscious boys. The lead divers communicated through hand signals, constantly checking on the boys to ensure they were stable and secure. For each underwater passage, the divers needed to work together seamlessly to maintain the safety of the children. The first day of the rescue saw 4 boys successfully extracted. They were rushed to the hospital, where medical teams were ready to treat them for exhaustion, dehydration, and minor injuries. Despite their harrowing ordeal, their spirits remained surprisingly high. As the rescuers brought each boy to safety, the cheers and relief echoed throughout the rescue base camp, igniting a sense of hope among the anxious families waiting outside. The following day, the rescue continued. Another group of 4 boys was brought out, each facing the same challenges as their predecessors. The rescue team had adjusted their approach, refining their techniques based on the previous day's experiences. They were determined to ensure the safety of every boy, knowing that time was of the essence. On July 10th, the final phase of the rescue began. The remaining 4 boys and their coach, Ekkapol Chantawong, were prepared for their extraction. The rescue team knew that every second counted, and the logistics of safely transporting the remaining group were critical. The boys were given additional sedatives, and the divers prepared for the final underwater trek through the cave's labyrinth. As the divers navigated the last stretch of the flooded cave, tensions ran high. With every movement, the stakes escalated. Rescuers worked tirelessly to maintain their focus, ensuring the boys remained secure and safe as they maneuvered through the final obstacles. After several hours of intense work, the last group emerged from the cave. They were met with cheers, tears, and a profound sense of relief from the rescuers and families alike. While the successful extraction of all 12 boys and their coach was celebrated as a remarkable achievement, the operation came with its own tragedies. Tragically, 2 Thai Navy SEALs lost their lives during the mission. Saman Kunan died while on a supply mission within the cave, and Beirut Pakbara later succumbed to a blood infection. Their bravery and sacrifice highlighted the extreme dangers associated with cave diving and rescue operations. The Thai cave rescue operation remains one of the most extraordinary and daring rescues in modern history. It demonstrated the power of international collaboration, where divers and rescuers from around the globe came together, united by a common goal. The rescue showcased human resilience and the lengths people will go to protect one another, reminding us of the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. After their rescue, the boys underwent a period of recovery in the hospital. They were treated for dehydration, exhaustion, and psychological distress from their harrowing experience. However, the world was captivated by their story of survival and the incredible bravery of those who worked tirelessly to bring them home. The boys emerged not just as survivors, but as symbols of hope, resilience, and the power of community. Despite the complexity of the mission, all 12 boys and their coach were rescued safely. The operation, which involved over 90 divers from around the world, as well as thousands of volunteers and military personnel, was hailed as a monumental success. The Thai cave rescue remains one of the most incredible and daring rescue operations in modern history, showcasing international cooperation, bravery, and ingenuity in the face of seemingly impossible odds.